Baku impressed me, not just as a tourist, but as someone who studies cities and real estate. The skyline, the waterfront, the architecture and ambition, it feels alive, it feels modern, and it even reminded me of early Dubai with obviously more heritage. But here's the real question. Does it have the fundamentals to become a property investment hub like Dubai? Or is this just another overhyped emerging market story? Let's break it down properly. And hey, welcome back to Beyond Dubai series, where we explore, analyze, and evaluate serious investment opportunities globally outside the UAE. So with that, hit the thumbs up button, subscribe, and let's get into it. If you're new to this series, Beyond Dubai is where I analyze emerging markets or simply under-discussed property markets that could offer long-term strategic positioning. Not Instagram hype, not cheap is good, but the real macro fundamentals, developer credibility, infrastructure, capital flows, and risk versus rewards. As investors, we need to position ourselves earlier and visualize those grand ambitions before anyone else. That's why today we're looking at Baku, Azerbaijan. I visited Baku a few years ago and I was genuinely impressed. The architecture is stunning. You have the flame towers, the Haydar Aliyev Center designed by Zaha Hadid, a mix of ultra-modern skyline with UNESCO sites, a very wide boulevard with a very nice promenade on the marina. It felt really safe, very culturally rich, orderly, and ambitious. Very Dubai-like in its vision. The food is incredible. The people are so welcoming. The city feels secure, stable, and honestly, the residents felt like they had some financial stability. But tourism impressions don't equal the investment fundamentals. That's why I went deeper into it and tried to analyze what's going on there and how to position myself and anyone else better. We'll start with a macro overview of Baku and Azerbaijan as a whole. First thing to note is that Azerbaijan is a resource-driven economy. According to World Bank and IMF data, oil and gas still account for significant exports. GDP growth has been steady but cyclical due to the price fluctuations in energy. Government has been investing significantly in diversification. Baku itself, population of roughly 2.3 million, it's the capital and the economic center of the whole country. Most importantly, it has a very strategic location between Europe and Central Asia. Very strong ties with Turkey, and it has an increasing regional influence. Infrastructure investment has been going on since 2012 when the Eurovision happened in Baku and there was the Formula One expansion, which now also happens in Baku. The government has pushed modernization aggressively over the past 15 years. Now, if we look at the property market snapshot in Baku, well, first thing that we note is that the market has been very heavy on end users. There's less international speculation like in Dubai, and it's more fragmented in terms of developer quality. If we look at the average pricing based on various Azerbaijani websites that I've checked, prime Baku city apartments usually range in between $1,200 to $2,500 per square meter, compared to Dubai Prime, which easily exceeds $4,000 to even $6,000 per square meter. That pricing delta immediately attracts investors. But lower price doesn't necessarily equal better investment. We must evaluate the liquidity in this market. Rental yields, exit demand, which is very important, a key factor in analyzing Baku specifically. And of course, the legal framework. You want to be secure as a global international investor. So let's start with the latest one, the legal framework. First of all, foreigners can purchase properties in Azerbaijan. If this wouldn't be true, we wouldn't be speaking right now. However, land ownership, like in many CIS countries, is restricted in some areas. Structures are generally allowed, but due diligence is critical. Title verification must be extremely thorough. Unlike Dubai's fully transparent nowadays DLD system, Azerbaijan's registry system is less digitized and, of course, less standardized. That sequentially increases the legal risk, documentation complexity, and some need for local legal support. This is not really a click and buy environment, even compared to their neighbors, Georgia, which is much easier and much more streamed. So overall, it is possible. There are plenty of opportunities. The developments are beautiful, like literally stunning. There is a reason why they call Baku the Paris of the East, not just because of the architecture done by Rothschilds and everyone who was involved in the discovery of oil in there, but also with the new developments. So with that, let me speak about some specific projects that I was considering. First, I'll start with a project that is actually outside of the capital, but very close by, and this is called Sea Breeze Resort. Now, this is where the things get interesting. Just outside Baku, as I mentioned, along the Caspian coast, you have the Sea Breeze Resort developed by Emin Agalarov. For context, if you don't know, Emin is the son of Aras Agalarov, which is one of the largest property developers in the whole post-Soviet countries. He's the founder of the Crocus Group and is one of Russia's largest development companies. But today, we don't speak about that. We're focusing on his son's developments, especially in Baku. So Sea Breeze is positioned as a very large-scale coastal master developer. It's a lifestyle resort community, including everything you can imagine, from villas, townhouses, apartments, with all kinds of views, golf sites, anything. Moreover, it's mixed residential, hospitality, and entertainment. Sounds a bit like Dubai and some of the master communities that specifically Emar does. They've built branded residences, beach clubs, mid-rise coastal buildings, and private villas, and it looks visually like a Mediterranean or even a European Dubai version coastal ambition. Their marketing suggests a very long-term vision of turning Sea Breeze Resort into a full-scale coastal destination city. So it's actually a completely new city within the country. And honestly, visually, it's hyper impressive. They have plenty of flagship projects, which I'll mention quickly, that really blew my mind. But again, as investors, vision must meet the fundamentals. So let's look into that. Speaking about the flagship projects, let's mention some of them. And I've already discussed that Sea Breeze includes luxury low-rise apartments. And when I watched some interviews, even with Emin, he was mentioning that they were not really allowed to build anything higher than 4 or 5 floors. But then when he presented the whole master plan to the government, they agreed on allowing this to happen. So now, besides the private villa communities, you might see more higher towers, taller buildings. However, all is done in ambience with each other, and everything really works well with every single community, even though they are so different. And if you'll check, or even on YouTube, some reviews, you'll see that you have anything from like forest-looking areas to very beachside kind of Mediterranean type of villas. So it's really interesting that you can kind of choose anything in between, and you even have golf cars to just go around. Pricing can, of course, vary depending on the development phase. Some offerings appear significantly below Dubai alternatives, but it's important to know that the liquidity is also thinner. International buyer base is much smaller than in the UAE, and the exit market is also regional. So it's more about Turkey, post-Soviet countries, but also from some more research, I've seen that they are still getting so many Western investors, and I think it's growing, but they still don't have the same kind of hype as we had in the UAE. So this is not yet a global liquidity asset market like Dubai Marina or Palm Jumeirah, but it definitely has that potential. So besides the capital appreciation, which in many reviews, interviews I've watched in the past, not only from those developers themselves, but also from people who actually invested in there. I mean, you can research YouTube, you'll see many of those. They usually mention that by the time of completion, they would have about 30 to even 40% capital appreciation, which is quite impressive. But what if you don't want to flip it? What if you just want some steady income? That's why we need to look at the rental market and see if there is any kind of viable opportunity in there. If we look specifically at the Baku rental yields, reported estimates suggest something between 5 to 8% gross rental yields depending on locations. But seasonality is a big factor. Tourism demand is rising, but it's not mass scale. Short-term rental demand also exists, but nowhere near Dubai volumes. Also because the hotels they're actually quite affordable and there are plenty of options. Population growth is also slower and the expat base is definitely much smaller than in Dubai. This means less rental velocity or localized tenant pool. However, also while watching some interviews with Emin, he was mentioning that in the last few years, there was a very interesting shift happening specifically in Seabreeze Resort because many of their residents slowly started becoming full-time residents, actually spending most of their times in that city and then just driving to Baku. So he mentioned something around 40 to 50%, which I'm not sure if I believe in that. Maybe it's a bit smaller, but still, that's quite an interesting fact. Why investors are currently looking at Baku, just besides me and my personal interest? Some reasons include the relatively undervalued prices compared to Dubai, lower entry ticket compared to many other very well-developed countries around Azerbaijan. And while you tell me this is a developing country and so on, just visit Baku. You will see what I mean. It's a very, very developed city. Early-staged master plan developments, regional diversification, and emotional appeal. It's a beautiful city. Those factors in total, they make it quite attractive. Also, psychologically, investors kind of love the next Dubai psychology and narrative, which some of the developers in Baku are trying to push on to their investors. The next Dubai is often used too loosely. Dubai had aggressive freehold reforms, strong capital inflow, specifically due to the tax advantages, global branding, and very deep liquidity. The registry system became ultra transparent and everyone was working towards it. Baku is earlier in this evolution, but it could definitely get to that point if the government will really push this. Now, if we speak about the other side, the risks that I see with this, first, number one is the liquidity risk. So for me as an international investor, this should be very important, and it is. Resale market depth is limited comparing to the UAE. So if I'm looking to that as an international investor, I want to know that I will be able to sell the project and I won't compete with multiple other developers and units that are around me. So this is quite a key thing which I will definitely watch closely in the next couple of months or even years before I invest. Number two is the regulation transparency. The legal frameworks are less streamlined as comparing to the Dubai DLD system and so on. So I would like to maybe get some consultations with some legal agents and so on to tell me exactly how this works, what are the caveouts, what are different ways that I might get myself into more risk so that I can actually, factor this in when I invest and know what to expect. Economic concentration is a big factor as well because the country heavily relies on the energy system. So while I don't see this as the main threat, it is still quite an important factor. So if they somehow, the price gets very down and this influences anything else, or if it goes up and just construction becomes much more expensive, then this could also impact you. So this is one macro factor that definitely has to be counted in. Currency risk is also something significant and important to know because the Azerbaijani manat adds definitely some volatility risk. And I mean, while it might look more stable, but still if you invest long-term and plan on keeping that property and maybe even renting it out, and then something fluctuates in the currency, this is something that you obviously have to count in with any kind of international investment, especially in countries where they don't operate in euros, dollars, and more of the major currencies. You have to definitely take this into consideration and maybe analyze some of the trends in the past 20, 30 years. Number five is the limited global buyer base. There is more regional demand versus the international one. So you might end up, if anything changes in the region and so on, to be only targeting the local regional market when you resell it. So that definitely limits you and it might create some pressure. And finally, the developer quality. Not all the developers operate at institutional standards. That's exactly why I mentioned the Seabreeze Resort, because I just simply know their story. In that, if you're looking at some regional players or specifically even micro location players in Baku, you probably want to analyze that in much more significant depth. Now, to wrap it up with my honest opinion and positioning in this market, Baku, I look at it as a promising regional destination, a lifestyle market perhaps with very huge market upside if everything stays the same. A market that has been on my investor radar for years, honestly. I was looking specifically Georgia and Azerbaijan. I went with Georgia as my first investment in that micro location, micro region, but Azerbaijan is next. Seabreeze especially is an ambitious project, and if you'll check it out, you'll see how many really cool developments they planned. They planned like a project that looks like Titanic on the sea. It's like a big boat, but it hosts apartments and so on. It's really cool, so just check it out. But this is not a buy blindly environment. You need to do your due diligence, have all the legal checks done, title structure, development, quality, and plan your exit before you buy. That's so critical. So in conclusion, I see Baku as a very prospective destination in the region, but also for the world. For investors like myself, it becomes a diversification candidate, but definitely not a replacement for Dubai. Even with everything happening right now in this region, it still won't replace it. It definitely deserves attention, and that's exactly why we're speaking about it today, but definitely do your due diligence. And as always, bringing you the unbiased truth in real estate. If you like this kind of videos, don't forget to subscribe and leave a thumbs up. It really means the world. With that, I'll see you in the next one.